No one is born fake. Every child is born naked, not just without clothes, but without defenses, without masks, without invented fears. The child's soul is fertile ground where love blossoms freely, where pain has not yet learned to hide, and where every tear has a name, a face, and a reason. But something happens far too soon. Before even learning to name their feelings, the sensitive child, bright, intuitive, alert, begins to sense the world around them as a minefield. Parents, often needy, narcissistic, or emotionally absent, cannot handle the fullness of their being. And so, this gifted child learns to become what others expect in order to survive. They feel they must earn love. And that is the beginning of the tragedy. Conditional love, attention as a reward, approval as currency, all of this builds an invisible prison around the child, but they don't know they are trapped. They believe they are being good. They take pride in pleasing. They learn to silence their cries, their desires, their questions. The gifted child is the one who adapts before anyone even asks. They anticipate, they understand too much, they feel too much, and one day they vanish. Every defense has a cost. Every mask grows heavy, and that weight follows into adulthood, where the child who once had to stop being themselves is still trapped in the fantasy that they will only be loved if they are perfect, strong, admirable, indispensable. But inside, they bleed. They bleed in silence. They bleed in relationships where they feel used. They bleed in solitude disguised as independence. They bleed in the constant anxiety of not being enough. They bleed in swallowed anger, in restrained tears, in the body that falls ill. The body remembers what the mind has buried. Psychoanalysis teaches us what is not symbolized is repeated. What is not processed returns. What is repressed transforms into symptoms. You feel pains you cannot name. You sabotage yourself without knowing why. You attract people who make you relive, unconsciously, the oldest wound, not being loved for who you truly were. Because even now, you are still trying to be what others expect. You are still living for someone's validation. You are still that child, waiting for your mother's gaze, not the cold, functional, distracted gaze, but the gaze that sees, that embraces, that allows. The cruelest prison is not abandonment. It is false acceptance. Being loved for something you are not is a kind of death, a slow death, an inner betrayal that repeats itself every day you wake up and put on the mask of who you're supposed to be. Alice Miller reveals this pain with surgical precision. The gifted child is the one who alienated herself from her own truth in order to remain loved. She learned early that her feelings were inconvenient, that when she cried, she made others uncomfortable, that when she rebelled, she was punished, that when she spake the truth, she was silenced. So, she learned to smile when she was sad, to help when she only wanted to be held, to stay quiet when she wanted to scream. And the worst part? She became good at it. So good, she forgot who she was. So good, she confused adaptation with identity. So good that now, even as an adult, even tired, even broken, she still doesn't allow herself to be. She still believes she will be abandoned if she stops pleasing. She still punishes herself for feeling too much. She still believes that love must be earned, never something deserved simply for existing. But there is a whisper rising from the depths, a muffled echo of what once was. It is the original child calling for you. The one who was silenced is still there, buried beneath layers of fear, shame, perfectionism, and denial. She waits. She always waited, because despite everything, you survived. But now, survival is no longer enough. It's time to live. And living, truly living, requires courage. The courage to unlearn, to undress, to unmask. The courage to disobey everything you were taught about who you should be. It demands that you bleed again, but this time, consciously. To cry the tears you never cried. To scream the scream that remained trapped. To hold fear with steady hands. To look into your own reflection and say, I am here. I am coming back for you. Because healing is not about becoming someone better. It is about finding the one you were before you had to become something else. And that is the most radical revolution. For the gifted child, love was never shelter. It was a contract. Be good, and I will see you. Be perfect, and I will hear you. Be useful, and I will love you. But never, ever be fully yourself, because that threatens me, because that confronts me with my own unresolved pain. And so the child, long before words, internalizes the belief that her true self is dangerous, that her feelings are too much, that her light is excessive, that her shadow is unacceptable. So she fragments, splits, between who she really is and who she learned to be in order to survive. And this conditional love, this love that wounds, this love measured by performance and obedience, seeps into the soul like an invisible tattoo, permanent, shaping choices, fears, relationships. You grew up believing that love and pain are inseparable, that to be loved, you must yield, disappear, constantly prove your worth. But this is not love. This is loyalty to your original wound. You are not in love. You are reliving the trauma. You are not choosing. You are repeating. You are calling romance what is nothing more than the reenactment of an old scar. You feel exhaustion, but it's not physical. It's the fatigue of being someone you are not. You get sick, but it's not only biological. It's the body crying for help because the soul was exiled. The gifted child became a functional adult, responsible, even admired. But hidden inside this strength is the cost of never allowing herself to be weak. She carries the world on her shoulders, just as she once carried her parents' moods in childhood. She blames herself for feeling sadness, as if sorrow were a sign of ingratitude. She forces herself to handle everything, even while crumbling inside. And the body begins to manifest what was never lived emotionally. Pains without cause, phobias without meaning, mysterious syndromes, chronic insomnia, anxiety disorders, depressions that rise and fall like tides. What Alice Miller reminds us, and psychoanalysis confirms, is this: the body does not lie. It keeps the truth you had to forget just to go on loving the very ones who hurt you. But now, the choice is yours. To keep getting sick in silence, or to finally start listening to yourself. Do you want to heal? Prepare to lose everything that once kept you comfortable. Because healing is not about smiling again. It is about finally crying what you were never allowed to cry. It is about disobeying the perfect image. It is about disappointing those who always praised you for being strong, mature, sensitive. It is about allowing yourself to be human, contradictory, ambiguous, real. It is about facing the emptiness left behind by everything that was never love, but you called it love because you didn't know anything else. Healing does not happen in a straight line. It is circular, spiral, regressive. You will feel fragile. You will doubt yourself. You will rage for having believed in so many lies. You will fear losing those you love, and maybe you will lose them. But each loss will be a gain of yourself. Each tear will be a return to your center. Each confrontation will be a liberation. Because when you begin to say no to what makes you sick, you are saying yes to the child who once had to silence everything just to be accepted. There is no healing without action. Psychoanalysis offers listening, elaboration, free association. But the return to authenticity demands more. It demands that you feel what you have always avoided feeling. If your defense is to please, say no. If your defense is control, let go. If your defense is independence, ask for help. These micro-disobediences are portals back to your original self. No longer accept love that demands you be less. Refuse bonds that depend on your adaptation. Choose solitude over fragmentation. Whether in analysis, therapeutic groups, or raw conversations, you must break the ancestral silence. You must break the invisible pact that says, "Do not speak against the family." You need to speak in order to live. The gifted child survived by being too good, too sensitive, too caring. But now it's time to be you. Not the perfect daughter, not your parent's therapist, not the endlessly functional adult, but the human being searching for truth. Perhaps the hardest part of all this is guilt. Guilt for seeing, guilt for questioning, guilt for feeling anger toward your own parents, guilt for wanting to step away from those who gave you everything. But Alice Miller leaves us a haunting warning. Real love can only exist where there is truth, and truth is often bitter. It requires admitting that the love you received, however full of intentions, was often insufficient, confusing, or even toxic. The gifted child grows up afraid of betraying her parents simply by existing differently than what was expected. So she sabotages herself. She doesn't go too far. She doesn't allow herself to fully shine. She doesn't allow herself to love freely. She doesn't allow herself to say, "That hurt me." But understand this: to remain silent out of loyalty to pain is to keep the trauma alive. Healing demands the courage to break the cycle, not to destroy those who raised you, but to rebuild who you truly are. The guilt you feel is not yours. It is the guilt you were trained to carry to preserve the illusion that everything was perfect. But perfection is not affection. Real love includes ruptures, confrontations, truths that hurt. And the greatest act of love you can offer your own story is honesty. You wonder why certain situations still destabilize you, why certain words disarm you, why at the sound of criticism you shrink back into a small child, terrified of losing love. It's because the original child is still trapped back there. She still lives inside you, frozen in that time when she had to stop being herself just to be accepted. She is waiting for you to return. She doesn't want fame. She doesn't want success. She only wants to be embraced by you. She wants someone to say, "You are not wrong for feeling what you feel. You have the right to exist your way. You don't have to fit in anymore." That loving listening, the one that was once missing, is what you can now give to yourself. This is emotional maturity, not hardening, but reparenting yourself, becoming the adult your child self never had. So often you feel strange, misplaced, different from everyone else. But the truth is, you are only disconnected from yourself. Trauma doesn't destroy. It diverts. It forces you onto paths that are not yours. It makes you build walls, avoid bonds, repeat patterns. But this does not mean you are broken. It only means you are conditioned. And everything learned can be unlearned. At any moment, you can choose to walk back. Back to feeling, back to trusting, back to belonging, not to others, but to yourself. This return requires patience. It requires compassion. It requires daily presence with your own wounds. But it is possible. And what you find at the end of the journey is you, whole, real, without having to pretend anymore. You no longer need to be good to be loved. You no longer need to be right all the time. You no longer need to carry the world. You can rest. You can feel. You can fail. You can simply be. And being in your rawest form is the greatest act of courage in a world that rewards masks. True freedom is born when the mask falls, not with noise, but with silence. With that deep sigh that whispers, "I will no longer abandon myself just to be accepted." You no longer need to be the child who saved the adults. You've grown. Now it's time to save yourself. Healing does not happen in the past. It happens here, now, every time you choose differently. Every time you embrace yourself where once you punished yourself. Every time you say no to what suffocates you, even trembling inside. Every time you speak your truth, even knowing you might disappoint. Every time you look at yourself with tenderness and whisper, "I will no longer leave myself for later." This is the love that heals. Not romantic love, not conditional love, but the deep, mature love that awakens when you stop hiding from yourself. This love, this one, is unconditional. This love is what your original child has been waiting a lifetime to feel. And now it has finally arrived. Through you. You spent your life trying to please, trying to be good, trying to be light. But you ignored your shadow, the part of you that raged, that wanted to escape, that hated your parents, and then hated yourself for feeling it. The part you buried to survive is the same part you must reclaim to live. Alice Miller taught us, there is no healing without walking through pain. There is no love without confronting the lie. There is no growth without facing childhood. Now the mirror stands before you, and in it, there is no more performing adult, no more adapted child. There is you. Simple, wounded, real, ready to be born again. But now, by choice. You grew up adapting. You learned early that to be loved, you had to silence who you were. That existing was not enough. You had to be useful, pleasant, careful, invisible in your pain, radiant in your performance. And so you grew. You grew waiting for love to arrive. But not just any love. Unconsciously, you wait for the same love. What you live in your relationships is not fate. It is repetition. You do not choose consciously. You search out of hunger. You love with the starvation of one who was never truly fed. And what you call love is often just a desperate attempt to finally be seen. Alice Miller warned us, the gifted child, in adapting, loses touch with their authentic needs. They no longer know what they truly want. They only react to what others desire. That is why in adulthood, love becomes a trap. You are drawn to those who make you feel needed, not to those who make you feel whole. You are attracted to those who ignore you, because you learned that affection always comes with absence. You fall for those you must convince, please, and win over, because this makes sense to the child who once had to earn every crumb of love. You call it chemistry, but it is nothing more than the reunion with your wound. And you live loves that are not homes, but battlefields where you try, once again, to be enough. But you never are, because it was never about them. It was always about you still searching in someone's eyes for the validation your father's eyes never gave. About you still trying to fix in someone's arms the hole left by an emotionally absent mother. And the harder you try, the more you lose yourself. You were conditioned to please, to intuit what others want and give it, to avoid conflict, to stay silent when wounded, to apologize for existing too much. And in relationships, this becomes erasing yourself to keep the peace, yielding to avoid abandonment, enduring the unbearable just to not relive loneliness, accepting less than you deserve because deep down you believe you are worth no more than that. And when the other leaves, you don't cry only for them. You cry for all the abandonments that came before. You cry for yourself, for never having been loved with freedom, for never having had the space to be whole. You say you want deep love, but when someone truly comes close, you recoil. Why? Because your child self learned that intimacy is dangerous, that showing vulnerability is an invitation to rejection, that depending is risky, that loving means losing yourself. So you run, you sabotage, you create problems where there are none, or you give yourself away, too much, too fast. Like someone trying to merge with the other because you no longer know where you end and they begin. You're not afraid of love. You're afraid that love will expose the truth that deep down you still don't feel worthy of it. That's trauma speaking, the echo of childhood begging for rescue disguised inside adult gestures. It is possible to love differently. But for that, you must rebuild yourself from the inside out. You must stop chasing love and start offering it to yourself. You must learn to choose yourself, to say no without fear of losing, to exist without asking permission. And it begins with a radical decision: to stop adapting. Not in the name of love, not in the name of peace, not in the name of your fear of being alone. You must die symbolically to that adapted identity, the one you built just to survive, so you can be reborn into real love. A love that demands no performance. A love that doesn't punish your truth. A love that doesn't repeat your childhood. A love where you can simply be. Nothing more, just be. If you want to heal in your bonds, practice this. The silence that once protected you in childhood is now destroying you. Speak, even if your voice trembles. What remains unspoken becomes illness. If the price of love is hiding yourself, then that love is poison. By refusing less, you teach your unconscious that there is another way now. Write the story of your loves. See the pattern. See the wounded child crying out there. And stop calling it bad luck in love. It is trauma, not destiny. Needy people will feed on you. Whole people will expand you. Learn the difference. Choose those who embrace you fully, your light and your shadow. Want to be heard? Hear yourself. Want to be valued? Recognize yourself. Want to be respected? Take a stand. Want to be loved? Love yourself, without negotiation. You've spent a lifetime waiting for someone else to see your pain,